the ladies can pinpoint another Sunday, we should probably do one Sunday a month.
Is that okay, Vic?
That sounded good. Keep going.
Well, yeah, July 6th.
There you go, yeah. Yeah. It just makes things flow
And we
easier.
could go, if the boys show up, we can go shoot.
They asked about it last night, and I told them, no, you have to come 2 weeks in a row because we won't know you're coming.
Right.
We won't know you're coming. Like, are you guys going to shoot today? I don't know. Were you in church last week? Because, well, we can't plan unless you're there. You know,
You
so
can't plan it unless we know that you're
yeah, because
continually.
I don't want to call out you guys, and then they're like, oh, we already have something planned. So I think they're going to get on board. I said, you're either going to get on board or not. Yeah.
I've been harping on Susan a little bit, just a little bit.
Because they go shooting like for sure once or twice a week. And they're Advent shooters, so they're not missing out. And I told them, but for me to call all these guys up and you don't know about it, it ain't gonna be cool. So you gotta go like that, you know. They just gotta go up a little bit, you know.
That's all. Yeah, Serena and Susie are going through, they're working a lot of Sundays, but
Yeah.
it's like Wednesday night, what are you doing?
And they're finally catching on to, like last night when I came over for dinner, don't come just in time, man. We need to come like 30 minutes ahead of time. When you come rushing the door, we're all sitting there saying,
We're sitting there eating.
soldier up, man. You come to work like that? No, I don't come to work like that,
We
no.
work like that.
So, someone had to tell me way back when, hey,
God didn't get a hold of me.
on time means 22.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. My mother used to yell at me. We're all sitting here, you come in like a, you're not even,
I'm not ready yet.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. Well, we are now in the mood for Bible study.
Okay, I got something mailed before you tell Bill about, is there a new dump here?
That's
Is
Valvoline.
it transfer station?
No, that's
Well, they just tell me about it. Remind me about it.
Right, that, well,
Oh, they put it in
Miss
the.
Agnes was doing that too.
All right. Well,
People, that's where it goes. Just, yeah, put it in the
How are you this morning, Linda?
new building.
How are you this morning?
We got a new building now for the trash. That's it.
Made it fancy.
Matthew 5. We'll jump back into Matthew 5.
Yeah, it's.
That was a nice opening. Oh my, now we did everything right. People should start coming in.
Amen.
The effort of man, you know. Oh, well. God assured me today, the folks I need to talk to will be there. You leave crowd size to me. Okay, all right. Okay, you got it. And he's right. So, anyway, I thought we're at the end of the Beatitudes, but we're going to go through chapter 5 all the way because it's a setup for chapter 5. But we'll just hit a couple of quick. It is Bible study, and I thought we had already covered a couple of technical things. We'll review those technical things quickly and then move into verse 17. But so we've been covering Sermon on the Mount for a couple of weeks. Chapter 5, Matthew 5. chapter 7. Am I right on that? Chapter 7. Matthew 5, 7, yeah. And we've been parked in the Beatitudes, the entry, the grand introduction to Christ's sermon, if you will. And we know all about, we've talked about all the generalities and specifics of the crowd, and by then Christ was already a known commodity, fully known. He'd already expressed that he and God are equal. Almost got stoned for that. He has already risen a dead person. He's already healed some of the sick. Remember, God said the fame of him went out all through the area. So he's already a known commodity. The enemies are already there and fully loaded, and his supporters are there and fully loaded. So it is a known event that's going to happen. Any known event we go to, we pretty much know what the setup is. All right, there's the home team, there's the opposition, there's the hecklers. Christ was pretty full aware of what was going on. So that's kind of the backdrop of the sermon. But with that, okay, it is chapter 5. I'm sorry, chapter 5, Matthew 5. We learned a couple of things at Bible study. The Bible is composed of ancient texts. No kidding. So every time I often forget, I think, oh yeah, this was, oh wait a minute, this was like 1,000 years before our founding fathers or 1,500 years before. But for us, it's current because we read it all the time. So that means a lot because that time period was written goes way before any religions that we know today. The Baptist religion, the Methodist, the AOG crowd, goes way before that. Goes before Catholicism, if you can imagine. Just before Catholicism. So the text is the source, not the religious views that have carried from that time forward. And we think, oh, well, look, but 4 billion people believe that. Yeah, well, 2 billion people believe Islam as well, and it's not the truth. Right. It just carried on. And it didn't carry on because it was on the rock and roll station every week. It carried on because Satan's driving it from behind the scenes. That's how it carries on. I've told you, I've had some Islamic friends, and I can point to them right away in their own Quran. And they're, whoa, you're not qualified to talk. Yeah, but it says right here. How about this one here? All right? You're in the wrong text. Well, we took the 5 books of Moses to write it. We'll go back to that and get rid of that. All right? Because you're missing out on a whole bunch of other stuff. So it's the core text. It's not the religion. And we all fall guilty of that. But it's the core text that's the important thing. The language and the grammatical rules displayed in those passages come from ancient languages and ancient ways of communicating, right? Wasn't a lot of writing going on, so it was a lot of verbal communication. They are foreign to us in this modern world. Some of them have carried over. You know, if I repeat, clean your room, clean your room, clean your room. That carries over from the Hebrew and the Aramaic and the Egyptian. It's a 3-time proclamation, which means you're dead meat if you don't do it. All right? And there's a sequence involved. The second command means we're armed and ready. Third command is typically, here we come. And when your mother says clean the room the third time, you're typically, here it comes. So we have a lot of those still in our culture as well. But we must be careful, very careful when we're reading the text, myself included. And it's good, even last week, to get correction because we have to be careful. We have to be real careful. We must endeavor to understand these passages as they were understood in that time period, which is very difficult to do. And it takes a crowd, I think, to do it. A misunderstanding of Scripture will create all sorts of detours and bad doctrine. It may not create something that's going to send thousands of people to hell, but it is absolutely something Satan will grab onto and use that confusion to put on mass media and all of that. And I'll show you what I mean. So one of the things we talked about was the ancient method of bookending. Bookending. I don't know what the academic term for that, but it's bookending. And Bible verses that are repeated verbatim at various points in any passage are bookended to inform the reader that all those verses found in between are related to each other, if not connected to each other. And together they teach a single topic. It's an inclusive set or exclusive set, depending on how you look at it. But it is a private club. All those verses, bookended by this one, bookended by that one, is a private club. And they're all connected, if you will. This is done in Matthew 5, verse 3 and verse 10 in the Beatitudes. The Beatitude that lands on 5:3 and the Beatitude that lands on 5:10 are bookends for all of the Beatitudes. So in the ancient world, that would tell the reader, these are somehow, or not somehow, but they are related and connected in some main way. Not in a superficial way or a religious way. In a main way, they're connected. And you have to, and it should reveal itself. It's not a secret. It should reveal why are they connected. Okay? So we know verse 3 and verse 10, for example, they're being spoke of here, they're already subjects of the kingdom of heaven. So that group from 3 to 10 are all believers, born again, the elect, children of God, however you want to phrase it. They are all connected. And how can I come to that conclusion? Because if you look at verse 3, the first bookend, the conclusion to that statement is, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. They already belong to the kingdom of heaven, i.e., they've bowed the knee. If you go down to verse 10, the conclusion to that statement is, theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So there's the two bookends for all those Beatitudes. So everyone in between, it's already a known implication that they are also in the kingdom of heaven. It's already implied in the context. It doesn't have to be written in, hey, by the way, all these guys belong too. In the ancient world, it was well understood. That's exactly what he's saying. They're all connected. And now that you know there's bookends in the Bible, you probably already knew that, you can go through now and look at almost every, and they're very prevalent in Greek and Hebrew, and Aramaic, and Arabic during the Quran, because I've checked them. So there, that book ending was very much done throughout the ancient world. That was one poetic device we learned about. So if you go through the Bible, look at the Psalms. It's all over the place. They'll connect certain passages. So whereas one group might have argued about it for years, and another group might have said, well, it kind of nuances that. When God writes it down, you're both right. It is, and it's connected. So there could be wiggle room. We argue about some of these things, but if it's bookended, it's a clear implication in the ancient world that these are all connected. So, you know, view it as you may, but again, if you go through the books of that period, you're going to see it. And even the Quran, written 650 years later, after the Bible was completed, you'll see the bookending in there. So it's a known thing. And the English scholars today, they're allowed to argue about it, but their argument are oranges, this is apples. That is what they did in that day. So, you know, bookending. So that's going to be something you're going to see in the Bible. It ended up becoming very helpful to me because I learned that last year. I thought, at the beginning, that's why there's always the repeated verse. I couldn't figure it out. So pay attention. And then Kevin had brought up something too, which caught me totally by surprise, Ken. Pay attention to the pronouns when you read through the Bible. Here's the issue. This will be a good study for you. I had to do it once again. Go home on Google and type in Old English personal pronouns, and it will give you what they mean in modern English now. You have to do it because there's already a doctrine that I can remember, I'm aware of, where someone has misquoted Moses. Instead of talking to the crowd, they quoted him as talking to a singer, and it started a bad doctrine. And if you just take the time and go to the Old English, it will show you what the personal pronouns are. Because remember, they wrote this in Old English, and you'll see it. Let me give you an example. So, a pronoun is a replacement for a name. So he, she, it. It's a noun, like pulpit. But instead of saying the pulpit, I can say it.
Right.
It's a pronoun. He.
Also defines groups or individuals.
Yeah, can be plural or singular.
They, he is
Yep.
specific, they is.
Can be plural or singular. And I'm going to touch on something right here you may not be aware of. They can be informal or formal. And modern English has jettisoned the personal pronouns into formal. They're still around in German. They may be around in Spanish, I'm not sure. But I'll show you what I mean. And this is what Kevin pointed out last week. And I thought, oh yeah. I mean, I was okay still, but I should have been more aware of it. So watch this here. Look at verse 11. Blessed are ye when men shall revile you. Two ways of saying you. I better find out if they're the same. It's going to make a difference in this passage. Now the bookending is making sense because God is going to back it up with personal pronouns here. And he says, blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you and shall say all manner of evil against you. So you have ye, you. In this passage, Christ is pointing to either an individual or a small group of individuals within the crowd. That's what the personal pronouns are doing. And when you called that out, I thought, that would have saved me 20 minutes of study trying to figure that out. And then I was still guessing, is he talking to a small group? Personal pronouns identify it. The personal pronoun ye is a singular you. So if I tell Chuck, hey you, that's ye. Or ye should, I don't know, what should ye do? Give me another song for the thing. You know, I say this, yeah, I don't know properly how to use it. Ye will be a singular you. But Jesus has not met these folks in person. That's the strange thing. So while he is saying ye, ye can also be an informal you, but small group. So it can be a Kevin, or it can be the 5 or 6 that I know who are on the same page in this big crowd. Ye, right? It's almost code. And that's what Jesus appears to be doing. He not only says ye, so maybe he looked right at a person or possibly identified him. I don't know if he would have done that in this situation. But when he says ye, with the bookended attributes that are there in the Beatitudes, it appears when he says ye, he's talking to a select group in the crowd now, and they know who he's talking about. Because a lot of them are clandestine at this time. Underground churches, catacombs, all that kind of stuff. So they're not in the open with their faith. And Jesus seems to be okay with that. You're still doing the work. So when you're in a crowd of enemies, friends, and foes, and you say, I'll give it till well, let's see how they used to do that till I was in the telecom world. Well, I can't even go there. But anyway, there'd be a whole group of known enemies, bystanders, and experts in the field. So in order to protect them experts, I might say, you all know what I'm talking about. You know, those that have ears, let them hear. Right? That's what Jesus is implying. He's talking to a crowd, but he says, ye, when ye are persecuted. Okay? Men shall revile you, talking the entire group. It's just a little, it's a grammar dance is what's going on. And I may not be explaining it quite well, but in the Old English, that's what ye was for. To talk to a singular or a tight group, ye, the ones that are in the circle. You would be the entire crowd. I'm talking to you. However, right now, ye that have ears, you know it's how. So anyway, I can do it. All right, so we still do it in Germany. All right, the prior form of English, if you will. It's still done. So I was told emphatically, don't screw this up, or you could find yourself getting screamed at because you're insulting somebody. So when I'm talking, so Miss Linda comes in the English world, and I don't know her, I'm going to say Miss Linda, formal. if I know her, how you doing, Linda? You know, okay, we understand that. Formal, informal, In Germany, it goes beyond that. So if I meet a guy, a fella, you know, German English here, strange to understand. Okay, so if I meet a fella or a gal, I have to ask them in conversation. Okay, if they're my age, within 8 years or so, if they're my age, I can speak informal to them, except if they're a stranger or a guest, then I have to use formal. All right. So here's the difference. So Jerry walks in. I know Jerry. We're pretty close in age, right? And let's say, so Linda comes in. All right. We're pretty close in age. But Linda, I don't know. Jerry, I know. So I might wie geht alles mit dir? How is everything going with you? Wie geht du, right? Wie heißt du? What heißen is name. Wie heißt, with a T, du. How are you? If I say it to Linda, she's my age, that would be cool. If she's not informal, that would be cool, but I don't know her. So I'm going to go into the formality, the ye and the yeas. I'm going to see, wie geht's? Good morning. Wie heißen? Notice it's not T. Wie heißt? Wie heißen? Wie heißen Sie? That's formal. Wie heißen Sie? Right? With Jerry, wie heißt du? You know? And it's very important. If you don't use that formality, first of all, Linda's going to be insulted. Because I'm talking down to her. We don't really see that in English, but in German it's still set. So she comes in, wie heißt du? Darf ich du? So I can ask her, can I use do? Can I use informal? So in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, you hear it all the time. Darf ich duzen? Will you permit me to use do? Because German spoken is not German written. So when you read German books, it's a different language almost. When you speak, it's different. And if you don't get the speech right, you're better off. They know you're American, they're going to be very kind. Well, Germans aren't as kind as Spanish folks. I was going to tell you straight up. They play these bravado games. They'll try to keep you in English. You try to keep them in German. You speak German, to me, they would answer in Arabic. They thought it was a Turk or a Serb. So they would answer, and, you know, I have to game them. Germans are, I don't know, they're different. So that's what's going on here. We used to have it in the Old English, but we don't now. We don't now. So if it's somebody my age and I know them, I can, and all the verbs change, by the way. So, can I give you this plate? Kann ich dies geben? Can I give you that? If I say it to a guest, you know, eine Frage bitte? You know, can I ask you a question, please? Can I have permission? Is what it's saying. Eine Frage bitte? And darf mich Sie zu geben? Sie zu geben. You, formally. If I say it wrong, they're either going to pick me right out of a crowd. He's a foreigner. Or they're going to say he's disrespectful. Why would you talk that way to her, you know? So I'm just telling, let's just get rid of all that. If you go into the old German, that's why you'll see the Bible sometimes will use German to cross-reference, because it was written at the same time as the King James Bible. The German Bible was written actually before. And the King James writer would use that sometimes to reference, because it didn't quite translate from Greek or Hebrew to English. The barbarians, Germania, were still there, and it's the same German. I mean, that's a neat thing about the German language. You can read the ancient text right there on the wall. So, I don't know, all of that. But know the personal pronouns, because we don't have them in English. And for me, I had to learn them the tough way. So, you know, do they have that in Spanish? A formal, you and me, and
Yes.
it is in, okay.
Yeah, for example, if I'm talking like informal, how are you? ¿Cómo estás? How are you? But if I talk to formal, it's ¿cómo está? Without the understand in English, if I talk to somebody, formally, it's like, how are you, Miss or Mrs., whatever.
Right.
If it's informal, it's how are you, that's it. I
Oh.
don't have to say Miss or you. But in Spanish, it's ¿cómo estás? It's informal.
Okay.
¿Cómo estás? With the S at the end. And if it's formal, it's ¿cómo está?
Huh, huh,
And
so very
co-
subtle.
Like in old fashioned, it should be ¿cómo está usted? Usted is the formal.
Oh, okay,
Without saying
okay.
name or title, because we never know if it's a Miss, but it's an old woman, or it's a young woman, but it's a Mrs. We never know that, so it's like a
That's a formal,
neutral probably, the word, right? To say
Mm.
¿cómo está usted? That's formal.
okay.
Or ¿cómo está? Just ¿cómo está?
And then if you're a merchant, so if you're selling, if you own a shop and you're dealing with customers all day, are you always gonna use the formal?
I think it's always on the age gap. For example, me, if I say
Okay.
like a young woman or like I talk to them informal.
Informal.
That depends obviously in the situation. If I serve to them like in a restaurant, it's always informal.
Formal, okay.
Formal, but it's like a, I don't know, selling shoes or in a retail, whatever. It's more informal thing. That depends the situation.
And then
But
would,
it's probably the age gap. If I see
Oh.
obviously, always if we see an older person, it's always formal, never.
formal.
Unless it's our mom. Even in Mexico, some areas they talk to their parents like formal.
Mhm.
And for example, in central Mexico, we didn't.
Oh.
How are you? It's like a informal with parents, but there's some places that it has to be formal.
oh, okay.
If they
So it's not
like
just
a-
dialect then?
If they like one day they took like an informal, they probably.
Oh, wow, okay.
Something like that.
All right.
They, even in like, for example, my mom to his dad, she used to kiss the hand. Of my.
Oh,
my
yeah,
grandfather.
they do that,
It
yeah.
was,
Used to what?
kiss the hand like a,
Oh, okay.
how are you, dad?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
No.
some cultures, they kiss each cheek, right?
I used to do it all the time. And the hand of the older person. Yeah.
I don't know if you, I mean, it's some of them I don't like, but there's people in Mexico, they even they kiss in the mouth,
Mm.
fathers and sons,
Mm.
when they are old. It's weird to me, but.
Yeah, because I was just guessing, at least the folks that, you know, the Spanish folks are very good over at work. They won't use English. ¿Qué pasó? You know, so they force it. Okay, you know, loving, you know. But do you guys pick it up like nuanced to know when to switch, or do you actually ask for? That's what I found strange.
Oh, well, it's when, for example, I know Jerry for not so much, but it's not like I met him yesterday. So.
Mm.
I always talk to him in my head in Spanish or in English. When I say to him, "How are you?"
Mm-hmm.
I don't think to him like a young person. I mean, it's not no offense, but I don't think. But I.
As an old person?
No, I don't know, like a really old person.
Yeah,
It's difficult in English because it's the same. To me, it's the same. I mean,
yeah.
we ask permission, for example, when after a few times that we know that person that we always talk formally, can I talk to you this
Oh,
way?
so you do actually ask?
At some
Oh,
point.
I didn't
At some
realize.
point.
Okay.
But it's not like I think it's about respect, and when you have trust with that person after some point, you can ask, can I talk to you? Because especially is that because I know you're older than me,
Yeah.
but we
Out of
have
respect.
so much confidence. Can I talk to you informally? And that's
Yeah.
people's decisions.
Okay.
Some people are going, I prefer that you call me Mrs. or Miss. It's like to not break that barrier, you know?
Yeah.
To me, especially between men and women.
Hmm.
For example, at church, I always talk to men like formally.
Okay.
But sometimes it's like I know him for like 10 years. Like can I talk to you? Yeah, that depends. But sometimes, and the opposite,
Mm-hmm.
men ask women, "Can I talk to you?" No, I prefer you to call me.
Mm. Mm.
That depends on the situation.
Yeah.
That depends on.
So you really
the
have to grow up in
situation.
it, yeah.
But in reality, it's like older people or
Yeah.
You can talk to them initially, like informal.
You know, yeah, I was just curious about that, because I never really asked anybody, because I know, for example, like when the young folks would come over to my house, a couple of them, like one fellow in particular, and we love him to death, and we drag him to church, you know, father, but he's raised in the ways of modern youth. So for him to come into a room and just start talking to two adults there, I'm very insulted about it. Hold on a minute. I don't say it to him like that, but that's how I was raised. You don't just inject into the conversation. Those are adults. You ask permission. First of all, you wait till they're done speaking, period. All right? Then you see if they'll notice you. If they don't go in. And we would get spanked, especially if the specific, we were at their house, my father's side. They were raised with that. So, but that's how this young man is. Or he'd come in and say, call me Mike. It's like, oh, you don't call me Mike. I'm a general. You're a lieutenant. Okay, just out of respect. Or go right in the refrigerator. I let all the kids eat everything. I used to keep it. If I got 2 of them, I'd stock them, you know. So I had a swimming pool. But you have to ask me. Then I will tell you the refrigerator's yours. But you don't just go in there. But that's how it seems the youth are now. And they're not doing it to insult you. They just do it. And it bothers me because I'm like, you just insulted me, you know. Especially in front of these other people. And it's hard for me to get over that. And my wife will tell me, no, they didn't mean nothing by it. Yeah, but are you going to tell them or I'm going to tell them? Because I don't want that going on in the house, you know. Now, I'm somewhat, but I see a lot of that sometimes. Like, as I was saying, when I went to Munich, the language was a little bit Americanized. They're a little more flexible. Austria, forget it. They don't like, you know. And we had to physically ask people, you know. And then I had to throw, this is how deceptive I am. So I would throw on an Arabic or an Italian slant to the word so they wouldn't be able to answer me in English. Because I can understand High German, but Austrian, Slovenian German, very dialect. And so I wanted to practice more German. You know, I don't want to hear the English response. See, I'm better than you, I can speak English, that kind of thing. It's a bravado thing they played on there. So I would throw it, so I would slant it somewhat, like with a Turkish accent, and then they would have to answer me in German. They had no choice. But you physically had to ask them. And I couldn't copy the Austrian dialect. I can only copy the Munich. It's a little different. You know, gehst du oben? They would say, are you going upstairs? You know, whereas down south in Austria, Obi, that's all they say, Obi? I'm like, and they would catch you. He's not German. You know, switching to English. And it was just a stupid, I don't say they're stupid people, but they're very mechanical, very dominating in their cultures. It's like, you know, whereas me, I'm not, you know. Let's have coffee. You always have coffee when you sit down and talk. Forget it. Always, you know, at least that's how I feel about it, you know. Well, that's interesting because I never stopped a fellow across the street because they'll game me around, you know. They used to tell me, I have to run the chow hall once in a while, and I say, how do I tell the guys that they're looking? You know, this guy's ugly over here. Or so they would tell me, good looking, gordo. Oh, ¿cómo está, gordo? You know, and of course it means fat, you know. And so here I am telling the guy, I go, hey, you know, once I learned the word though, then I would tell them to get on the scale. The skinny guys would come in, and all the fat guys are up front. You guys better hurry up, you know. And so anyway, sorry, I just.
We are mean.
So,
We have nicknames in Spanish that are mean.
oh,
If it's about your, you know, like, defects on your body, that's gonna be your nickname forever.
and they're careful. I mean, they're very clean. They don't use any cuss words. They won't show me any cuss words. But they always playing around with me, you know. I said, okay, all right, you know. Anyway, well, good. So let's just end it on that. Pay attention because, again, I like to think I pay attention, and then I get up and it's like, oh, I hadn't even considered that. Now I got to make sure the rest of my sermon's in line. Because there's some grammatical things that religions and English has laid on the language now that do hold. But we don't use bookmarking very much anymore. We definitely don't use those pronouns. Everybody's a you, or we, or they, and it's very polite. Whereas in these languages, it's not. And one other thing we had talked about, you'll see it through the Bible now. This is brand new to me as a learner once again. They have something called a chiasmus, C-H-I-M-U-S, chiasmus, something like that. Whether it's Arabic, Greek, Hebrew, all of it. It's in the Quran as well. All those ancient languages would set up their explanation. I think we talked about this, where they would start something. My mom's a good cook, right? She likes to cook on Fridays. Her favorite meal to cook is broccoli. And then it will reverse the order. She always overcooks the broccoli. Sometimes she'll cook on a Tuesday, but she loves to cook. She loves to cook big meals. They're not necessarily bookended because the language is different. She starts off with, my mother loves to cook in general. What does she like to cook? She likes to cook broccoli all the time. When does she cook it? She likes to cook it on Tuesday night. Now watch verse 4. The other day we had it on Wednesday. We're still talking about a day of the week. Look at verse 5. Sometimes she overcooks it. She don't even say broccoli, but we know what she's talking about. Now you got verse 2 and 5 matching up. Then the final verse will be, she's a pretty good cook. It's not the exact same language, but you'll notice those first 3 verses, and now the other ones are in verse, reverse order. So if you take a pen, it will make an arrow. The emphasis are on the middle verse, the middle 2 verses. In the ancient world, that was a big thing. And you'll see it all over the Bible, even in English. You can see it right in English. You'll see a main topic, it narrows, it gets to the main point, then it goes out a little bit, goes back to a generalization. Sometimes it's an entire book, and there's little arrows here and there. So you can pick that up now. Later on, look up chiasmus on Google, and it will help you. It's helped me. I can go to the book of Isaiah, big, huge, wild, all kinds of prophecies. And look where the arrows are pointing. This is the main topic of this section. This is the main topic of that section. And here, down here, okay, I know where I'm going. I know what Isaiah is saying right here. And it's important because you can say, oh, see, this passage teaches there's not going to be a premillennial disaster. Whereas this gal can say, no, see right here, this is postmillennial. Now we're arguing about pre-trib, post-trib, and all of that. Whereas if you know where those arrows are, and you know about bookending, you can start locking in exactly what that author said. Now, it may not make sense with the religion or your theology, but that's what's being said. So you, like me, now have to take that passage and make sure my theology is correct. And I've had to correct some things. I'm like, wow, I never saw that. It's not necessarily Baptist. It's not necessarily Catholic, but you know what? It nuances both of them. But here's what the author said. So now I might find myself back to being a premillennialist, you know? Now don't get me wrong. Pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib, they're all true in a nuanced sense. But there is an exact timeline. And if you follow the old grammar, you'll see it emphatically. Boom, there it is right there. And there's no argument to get out of it. The only argument is now you've got to adjust what you thought was true. Now, this doesn't happen on the main and plain topics. Salvation's easy to nail down. Eternal salvation, very easy to nail down. Hebrews chapter 6, if you want to start there. Hell and heaven, those doctrines are very easy to nail down. Only the dope-smoking modernists who are into weird things will tell you something different. Because even the Catholics know it, even the Methodists know it, even the Jews know it. Those are main and plain doctrines. So those we don't argue about. You know, it's this or that, man. If you don't like it, don't find another church, find another text. Because most of the New Testament churches, whether I like them or not, are trying to follow this core text. All right? We're all at a different level of insight, so we struggle. And like that right there, for example, I would have had to spend hours researching Spanish speakers that are born again, and I can prove they're born again, and that are somewhat, are mostly conservative. That's a lot of research when I can just step right in and ask a professional right here. So that's why I like open Bible study. I can pretty much bank on that. I don't have to say, well, I reference Dr. So-and-so and so-and-so. No, I know someone who grew up in it. So, you know. Anyway, pushback, we cut off, that was a better than.
I heard a conversation yesterday in the Safeway checkout line. There were these two young guys, right? And they were having this conversation, like saying one word at a time to each other. You gotta stay in there for a minute. It was just real weird. It's, you know, what's new? Same old, you know. It was weird, man. They weren't even talking.
And you have to interpret?
They weren't even talking, but I was listening to them, you know, but they knew, you know, it was like, man, they don't even talk anymore.
I've heard that with the youth, man. Were they young, real young folks?
Yeah, they were in their 20s, they'd be in their 20s.
Yeah.
They text, or
Well-
emojis.
Yeah.
They don't communicate.
I mean, they can say they're gonna rob me, and I don't understand what they're saying.
It's all
you know?
generalized.
Yeah.
Everything just general.
Yeah, I stayed there for a minute, he said, I was there for a minute. That's the new line, when it's a short period of time, they say a minute, you know?
Yeah.
Like some of my guys at work, they're like 50, right?
Uh-huh.
And they're using this new, for a minute, I said, Conrad, did you work on da-da-da? He said, well, yeah, I looked at it for a minute, you know? It's a new line, for a minute.
But did you get the work done? That's
Did you
my
figure
work
it
done.
out?
Yeah, did you get it done?
I like it though.
That's funny, man.
I